Chapter 1, Part 1, The First Seal, the Antichrist. The first seal, lock, of the scroll, the book, in God's hand, is opened by Jesus in Revelation 6:1, and the Antichrist appears. This is not the start of the tribulation, yet. All the eyes of the world are on this man, the Antichrist, and his power, might, and influence are felt right across the globe. Initially, no one knows he is the Antichrist. It'll be revealed at a later date. At this point, he will be chosen democratically to lead a nation. This is when he's given a crown in Revelation 6:2. At some point later, he will seize control and rule over the whole world with 10 rulers of regions of the world under him. In Revelation 13:5 and 7, and Daniel 7:24 and 11:39. The Antichrist will use his rulership of one nation, the one he has chosen democratically to lead, as a stepping stone to attaining world power. When he attains world power, he will be the head of a one-world government, which he will set up secretly behind the scenes while ruling over the one nation. His rule will end when he is defeated by Jesus at the Battle of Armageddon in Revelation 19:20. In Revelation 6:2, John, the writer, says that he saw a white horse. He says that its rider held a bow, that he was given a crown, and that he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest in Revelation 6:2. This rider is the Antichrist, and as the rider of a white horse, he is a mirror image of Jesus on a white horse in Revelation 19, a copy, a counterfeit of him. However, at this stage in Revelation, he is merely the rider of the white horse, with a crown and a bow, who emerges after the first seal is opened. Little detail is given about him besides that at this point in Revelation. This is because his identity as the Antichrist has not been revealed to everyone yet. Although the term Antichrist does not appear in Revelation, John uses it in 2 of his letters in the New Testament, 1 John 2:18, 2:22, 4:3, and 2 John 1:7. The term Antichrist means to oppose Christ, and it also means to replace Christ. The Antichrist is Satan's replacement for Christ. He will be a counterfeit, a fake, a copycat, seeking to replace Jesus in the minds and hearts of people, and wanting to be worshipped in place of him. The narrative surrounding the Antichrist will be that of a saviour, a Messiah, and in due course he may appear on magazine covers and be given titles such as A New Saviour, The Messiah of Today, or Our Saviour. He will be perceived as being the strong man to save people from trouble, fear, and poverty. He will be seen as being the answer to people's problems, and he will convey a great sense of strength, power, and control from the beginning of his rule over one nation. The Antichrist is a man chosen or elected as a ruler by the people of a nation. This is evident from his being given a crown, and the crown he is given at this point in Revelation 6:2 is an earthly one. It is a laurel wreath symbolizing earthly honor. The Greek word for it in Revelation 6:2 is Stephanos, which means a garland or wreath made of laurel leaves. In ancient Greece, it was given to the winners of athletic competitions like the Olympic Games, and it was a symbol of triumph and achievement. In ancient Rome, it was worn by Roman emperors such as Julius Caesar, and was given as an honor for military achievement as it symbolized victory. The key thing is that it's an earthly crown, and that it's given to him, meaning it's the people of a nation who choose the Antichrist and elect him as their ruler. This indicates that he's elected democratically and is not a dictator initially. That comes later. He does not seize power and force himself onto the people as their ruler through military might when he first appears. There will be no need of a coup d'état or a civil war to establish his rule. Instead, he is elected by the people of a nation and is very popular with the majority of them, appealing to a surprisingly diverse range of voters. While his earthly crown, the laurel wreath, reveals that he is not God's man, but the people's choice, Revelation 13 makes it explicit that he is Satan's man, the beast, in Revelation 13, 1-2. Satan will use the Antichrist to get people to worship him vicariously in Revelation 13:4. None of this is apparent for some time. Instead, at the start of his rule over one nation, the Antichrist is popular and is hailed and applauded by the masses. Many people will find it hard to believe that this man is the Antichrist, but he is a deceiver who is both cunning and devious. He will deceive many because he has a hidden agenda of becoming the ruler over the whole world, and it will happen in Revelation 13:7. Daniel 8:12 reveals truth was thrown to the ground under his rule. Daniel 8:23 tells us he is a master of intrigue. And in Daniel 8:25 we learn he will cause deceit to prosper. Interestingly, the laurel wreath also links to the UN emblem, which is of a laurel wreath encircling a world map. This emblem encapsulates one of the ambitions of the Antichrist to rule the world, and he will achieve it in Revelation 13:7. The colour of his horse is also significant in that it is white in Revelation 6:2, symbolizing peace like a white flag or a white dove. But this serves only to make a great show of peace to the world. It's a facade. When he is made ruler of one nation, he will proclaim peace to everyone. He will talk a great deal about peace, and people will believe him and trust him, but it is a complete pretense, as his plan is to rule the world in Revelation 13:7. Daniel 8:25 confirms that when they feel secure, he will destroy many. Paul also tells us, while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Indeed, when he becomes the ruler of one nation, whilst talking about and proclaiming peace, he sets out to conquer. He is described as riding out as a conqueror, completely focused on conquest in Revelation 6:2, with a bow, a weapon, indicating that he has a very strong military presence. In addition, as part of the pretense of being a man of peace, there are no arrows with his bow, suggesting he does not start any wars initially, although that does happen later. Therefore, his conquest over people and nations is likely to be an economic one rather than a military one at first. At some point, he will gain power over the entire world through his one world government, which becomes a dictatorship halfway through the tribulation. In Revelation 13:5 and 7, Daniel 7:24 and 11:39. Beforehand, he will set about creating his new world order, a shift in the balance of global power in his favor in order to make it happen. He will accomplish this behind the scenes through secret deals with other national leaders. A crucial aspect of his rule is that the Antichrist makes a 7-year covenant, a contract or deal with Israel. It is a counterfeit mirror image of the covenant that God made with Abraham in Genesis 15. But unlike God with Abraham, the Antichrist breaks this covenant with Israel. According to my working hypothesis, explained in the timeline chapter of this guide, the signing of this covenant initiates the 1335-day countdown to the Great Tribulation. The Hebrew word in Daniel 9:27 is berit, meaning covenant, which is translated correctly by the New International Version. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him, in Daniel 9:27. Daniel 9:27 conveys that a 7-year covenant, a contract or deal, will be made between the Antichrist and Israel, and that in the middle of the 7-year deal, the sacrifice and offering will be stopped by the Antichrist, who sets up an abomination that causes desolation in the temple. This means the deal gives Israel access to the Temple Mount to restore the temple and restart the sacrifice and offering, which it does not have currently. Daniel 9:27 makes it very clear that this covenant starts the 7-year tribulation. It has generally been interpreted as being a peace treaty, although the word peace does not appear in this verse. There is a very clear connection in this verse, however, between the covenant, sacrifice and offering, and the temple. The abomination that causes desolation is the Antichrist speaking image, which he sets up in the temple. The speaking image of the Antichrist orders Israel and everyone else to worship him as God, in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. These events trigger the Great Tribulation in Daniel 9:27 and Matthew 24:15-22. This is discussed further in chapter 4 of this guide. One way this covenant could come about is that Israel will have something that the Antichrist wants, such as superior and advanced weaponry. The Antichrist would agree with Israel to return access to the Temple Mount to them for 7 years in exchange for this weaponry, so he can use it to assert himself or secure his position over the world. The covenant will also have to involve a deal being made with the nation of Jordan, the current custodian of the Temple Mount, and Jordan will get something significant in return for complying with the Antichrist on this. 10 weeks and 5 days after the covenant is signed, the sacrifice and offering on the Temple Mount restarts in Daniel 9:27, as explained in the timeline chapter of this guide. It could be restarted more easily than might appear at first. It has been reported that, in December 2018, a portable altar was consecrated in Israel, one that could be utilized on the Temple Mount. Furthermore, although the temple took many years to build originally, as the Old Testament records, it could be restored quite soon after a covenant is signed, in a matter of weeks rather than years. This is because the very first temple was not a building. That came later. In Exodus 25-30, there is a very detailed description of the first temple. It was a large and elaborate tent which could be recreated in a much shorter space of time. In fact, Israel may already have it made, stored somewhere ready for such a time as this, with a view to rebuilding the temple with stone later on. In other words, Israel doesn't need a stone building like it had before in order to restart the sacrifice and offering, which will be stopped 3.5 years later in Daniel 9:27. Revelation 13:1 describes the Antichrist as a beast, and this sums up his beast-like character and predatory nature. He comes out of the sea, and the sea is a metaphor for people in Revelation 17:15, suggesting he is a man of the people, an ordinary man who is neither born into royalty, nor is he the heir to a throne, nor the son of a national leader, for example. It also suggests that he is not part of a so-called political elite. He is outside it. He is a man who is likely to have worked during his life, which will add to his popularity, and he will portray himself as being on the side of the ordinary person. Daniel 8:23 describes the Antichrist as a fierce-looking king, and goes on to say that he will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does in Daniel 8:24. We are told people worshipped him and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" in Revelation 13:4. This creates a sense of his might and invincibility. Daniel 8:12 also confirms that the Antichrist prospered in everything he did. He will seem unstoppable, but his might and authority actually come from the dragon in Revelation 13:2. In the Bible, the dragon is Satan, which is clarified in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. It is reaffirmed in Revelation 20:2 and is repeated for emphasis so we make no mistake about it. By worshipping the Antichrist, people will be led into a trap of also worshipping the dragon, Satan, vicariously. This is because it is the dragon who has given him his power and his throne and his great authority in Revelation 13:2, and they operate as one unit. People will be completely deceived by the Antichrist. They will worship him and have no idea that they are worshipping Satan through him, or that his power comes from Satan. This is why John is given this revelation, to warn people ahead of time so they are not deceived. We also learn in Revelation 13:1 that the Antichrist had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. These metaphors are the same as the 7 heads and 10 horns of the false church called Babylon in Revelation 17:3. The metaphor of 10 horns and 10 crowns on its horns is explained in Revelation 17:7-14 as being kings whom the Antichrist will rule over in Revelation 17:12-13. The other 7 are previous kings, leaders before him in Revelation 17:10, and the Antichrist is an 8th king in Revelation 17:11. The 10 kings have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast in Revelation 17:12-13. This can be understood to be a picture of his one world government. The 10 kings are the leaders the Antichrist will appoint and will rule over. They are 10 national leaders he makes a deal with, appointing them as leaders over regions of the world, with him as head over all in Daniel 11:39. Planning ahead, he will have grouped all the nations of the world into 10 regions or zones, with a regional leader over each one. Whilst ruling over one nation, he will choose and appoint each regional leader, who will rule over the 10 world regions, and these are the 10 kings who agree to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled in Revelation 17:17. This means they will betray their people and their nation for their own self-serving interests. They will implement and enforce the Antichrist's orders over their region in return for more power, status, and wealth for themselves. More specifically, the deal he makes with them will be that if they submit to his rule and authority and hand over their people and their nation to him, they will receive more money, power, position, and influence in exchange by ruling over a group of nations, including their own, under him. Their 10 crowns are on its horns in Revelation 13:1, and the horns symbolize military might. The crowns being on the Antichrist's horns show that their role as regional leader rests on his military power propping up their thrones. When they become regional leaders, their army and military will enforce their rule over their region, including their own nation, backed by the Antichrist's own military might. They have a blasphemous name in Revelation 13:1 because they've put themselves above God and see themselves as being gods. All of this will be going on behind the scenes during the time that the Antichrist rules over one nation, and sometime later on, when he seizes global power, the regional leaders of the one world government will be revealed. As the Antichrist, empowered by Satan, seeks to oppose and replace Jesus and be worshipped in his place, it can be interpreted that the choosing and appointing of 10 regional leaders is a counterfeit mirror image of Jesus choosing his 12 disciples. They were Jesus's inner circle, and they did as he asked in Matthew 10:1-5, Mark 3:13-19, and Luke 6:13-16, just as the regional leaders will be part of an elite group who follow the orders of the Antichrist. However, Jesus' disciples acted out of love, respect, and devotion to him, whereas the Antichrist's regional leaders will be transacted into position as part of a deal. Connected to this, the false church called Babylon is portrayed as a metaphorical woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns in Revelation 17:3, and she rides him in Revelation 17:7. As we have seen, the 7 heads are previous kings, and the 10 horns are the regional leaders appointed by the Antichrist. The woman is a metaphor for the false church, the one-world religion that worships the Antichrist, which is described in detail in Revelation 17 and 18. The beast is explained as being the Antichrist in Revelation 17:7-8, and it is scarlet, as his reign will be steeped in blood, the blood of the martyrs who will be executed on his orders for not worshipping him during the Great Tribulation in Revelation 13:15. The Antichrist being scarlet is a complete contrast to the elders who are dressed in white in Revelation 4:4, and the raptured church's white robes when they're pictured in heaven in Revelation 7:9. The metaphors of sitting and rides show that he carries and supports the false church Babylon, that it is dependent on him for its existence, and it gets its power and authority from him. This church wields enormous global power and enjoys its leading status because of him. However, the Antichrist and his 10 kings, his regional leaders, actually hate the false church Babylon and set about destroying it towards the end of the Great Tribulation in Revelation 17:16 and 16:19. In turn, destruction comes to these kings, the rulers of regions of the world, and their armies, when they're led by the Antichrist into the battle of Armageddon, and they are defeated by Jesus in Revelation 17:14 and 19:20. The false church Babylon is discussed more fully in Chapter 5 Part 2 and Chapter 10 Part 2 of this guide. These events are also portrayed through another metaphor in Revelation 12. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth, in Revelation 12:3-4. John the writer is given a vision of Satan, an enormous red dragon, in Revelation 12:9 and 22, with the same 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads as Revelation 13:1 and 17:3, meaning the Antichrist and his regional leaders. There is no mention of a beast, however, as Satan has given him his power and his throne and great authority in Revelation 13:2, and they operate as one unit. At this point, there are only 7 crowns on its heads, not 10 as before in Revelation 13:1, so 3 of his regional leaders are no longer in office. This ties in with Daniel 7:24, which says he will subdue 3 kings, implying 3 of his regional leaders will rebel against him and he will defeat them. This is explored further in chapter 8 of this guide. Having given the Antichrist his power and his throne and great authority in Revelation 13:2, Satan swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth, which connects to the signs and wonders in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, and causing fire to come down from heaven, the sky, in Revelation 13:13. Because it is the dragon's tail that flung the stars to the earth, it is evident that they're being used by Satan to deceive people in John 8:44. Widespread bloodshed is caused by this, denoted by the colour of the dragon being red. The dragon is so enormous because it covers the whole earth. How these signs and wonders may be implemented is explored in chapter 2 of this guide. In Revelation 13:2, the Antichrist is described as looking like a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. This has been linked to Daniel 7, which contains predictions about several empires, Babylon being the lion, Medo-Persia being the bear, and Greece being the leopard. This creates the sense that the power and might of the Antichrist will be greater than all 3 of them. His might, power, and rule will completely surpass those previous empires, as they are only elements of him, not the whole. It also suggests he contains aspects of all 3 of those empires, so he is like them but bigger. Revelation 13:2 can also be understood to relate to aspects of his character. All 3 are predators, emphasizing his relentless domination, exploitation, and destruction of others. The leopard shows that the Antichrist does not change and has not changed. His spots remain the same, and as a predator and ruler he acts very swiftly. The bear, another predator, implies an antisocial and solitary nature like a bear's, despite his popularity with the people who chose him to be their ruler. The bear's feet also suggest strength and immovability, an uncompromising and unyielding nature. He also has a mouth like that of a lion, which shows he roars a great deal. He has a lot to say, and he is a dominant man, a bully, who intimidates people and nations and makes them submit to him, the conqueror bent on conquest, in Revelation 6:2. A lion's roar can also be heard for miles, which cements the idea that his voice is heard far and wide, around the world, and when he speaks, people pay attention. He will be a skillful and persuasive negotiator in the deals he makes, as well as being dominating and intimidating, and he will get his way. The Antichrist will literally do anything and say anything to get his own way and rule the world at any cost. In his mind, anything and everything can be sacrificed to the attainment of that goal. Revelation 13:3 portrays the Antichrist as sustaining a fatal head wound, but he returns to life in a miraculous way. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. This suggests there is an assassination attempt at some point during his reign, likely to be as a result of the 7-year covenant he makes with Israel over the Temple Mount in Daniel 9:27. Having a fatal wound healed suggests a mock resurrection, another example of the Antichrist being a counterfeit Jesus. This information is repeated for emphasis in Revelation 17:8, as it is important, because it is this mock resurrection that will convince people to follow the Antichrist. It is a turning point in people's perception of him. The inhabitants of the earth will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come, in Revelation 17:8. Their astonishment will be because he is revived, that he yet will come. And as a direct result of this, the false prophet ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast, who was wounded by the sword and yet lived, in Revelation 13:14. This image becomes the abomination that causes desolation in Daniel 9:27 and Matthew 24:15, and starts the Great Tribulation. It is explored in more detail in the discussion on the false prophet in Chapter 1, Part 2, and also in Chapter 4 of this guide. Revelation 13:5 describes the Antichrist boasting of his power with proud words, and his blasphemies occur each time he portrays himself in a godlike way, such as being the savior of people or taking the credit for everything. It is God who allows him to exercise his authority, dominating people and nations and becoming a brutal dictator, ruling over the world for 3.5 years, 42 months, in Revelation 13:5 and 7 and Daniel 7:24. In Revelation 13:6, the Antichrist opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. This describes the moment he puts a speaking image of himself in the restored temple on the Temple Mount and declares himself to be God in Daniel 9:27 and 2 Thessalonians 2:4. He orders everyone to worship him or face execution in Revelation 13:15, breaks his covenant with Israel and stops the sacrifice and offering in Daniel 9:27. This takes place 1335 days after the 7-year covenant with Israel is signed, according to my working hypothesis outlined in the timeline chapter of this guide, and it is the moment when the Great Tribulation begins. This is explored more fully in chapter 4 of this guide. In Revelation 13:7, the persecution and martyring of Christians is described as he is now ruling as a dictator over the whole world. He was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. This correlates with Daniel 8:24. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. In Revelation 13:8, we learn that all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast and, vicariously, Satan, unless they have converted to Christianity. This description of the Antichrist and his activities during the Great Tribulation ends with the solemn warning that if anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed, which calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people in Revelation 13:10. What this means is that this will happen and cannot be averted or avoided. Once he comes to power, The Antichrist will be unstoppable until he is defeated by Jesus in the Battle of Armageddon in Daniel 8:12 and 24 and Revelation 19:20. Christians are not being called to fight against or even challenge the Antichrist during the tribulation. All that Christians are being called to do in the face of this is to be patient, to endure, and to be faithful to Jesus, fixing our eyes on him in Hebrews 12:2. This is discussed further in Chapter 5, Part 1 of this guide. There are other descriptions of the Antichrist elsewhere in the Bible that help to provide a fuller picture of him, such as in the book of Daniel and in 2 Thessalonians. In Daniel 11:36, he is described as doing as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above everything. He is a blasphemer against God, rejecting and insulting God, and he will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. This echoes and reinforces the notion of the Antichrist being an opposer of God, who constantly places himself above him and who wants to be worshipped as God. It reinforces again that he will not be stopped by anyone except Jesus. In addition, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God. For he shall magnify himself above all. Daniel 11:37 KJV. The phrase "the desire of women" has been interpreted as referring to his sexuality, although it could be less about this and more to do with misogyny. His disregard for the desire of women could be alluding to an underlying hatred of women, or an attitude of valuing them merely as trophies that serve to make him look good. It can also be understood to mean that the Antichrist loves himself more than he wants to be desired by women, and that his desire to rule the world is far greater than his desire for them. This is certainly a portrait of a man who is completely full of himself, to the exclusion of everything and everyone else. He puts himself first at all times, and nothing else and no one else matters to him. Daniel also describes him as having a mouth that spoke boastfully in Daniel 7:8 and 7:20, and uttering boastful words in Daniel 7:11. The repetition of the adjective boastful cements the idea that he is completely egocentric, narcissistic, self-obsessed, and self-seeking. Daniel 8:25 reveals that he will consider himself superior. He is completely arrogant and full of pride, looking down contemptuously on everyone. However, he will honor a God of fortresses in Daniel 11:38, and he offers it great wealth. In other words, he puts his faith in military might, and he spends an enormous amount of money on it. This will enable him to attack the mightiest fortresses in Daniel 11:39. With the help of a foreign god, arguably the god of fortresses that he honors. This means that he will use his expensive military might to attack the strongest nations in the world during his rule, during the wars of the second seal, which are discussed in Chapter 2 of this guide, during the first and second woes of the seventh seal, discussed in Chapter 7 and 8 of this guide, and, ultimately, the Battle of Armageddon, discussed in Chapter 11 of this guide. Daniel 11:39 also shows him engineering his one-world government and appointing leaders to rule over nations of the world under him. He will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. He will already have planned a global division of all the nations into regions or zones, perhaps something like the one created in 1974 by the think tank called the Club of Rome. From the outset of his rule over one nation, he will be appointing his regional leaders. They will be national leaders, kings or presidents already, and he will make a secret deal with them whereby he appoints them to be leader of a region, a group of nations, including their own. At some point during the tribulation, they will have his authority over that region, which will be enforced by the military. They will enact his orders over it, and they will answer to him. They will gain more status, power, and wealth in exchange. This is how he will create his new world order, a shifting global power in his favor. Paul also provides information about the Antichrist, whom he calls the man of lawlessness in 2 Thessalonians 2. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day of Jesus' return will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God, in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3-4 NIV. The word rebellion in the New International Version is also translated as a falling away in the King James Version, meaning a rebellion against God, a falling away from him, also known as apostasy, which has been occurring continuously since the 19th century. Paul goes on to say in 2 Thessalonians 2, 6-8, "And now you know what is holding him back, so that he may be revealed at the proper time. For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one, the Antichrist, will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the splendor of his coming." The phrases "what is holding him back" and "the one who now holds it back" have been interpreted as being either the Christian Church or the Holy Spirit. It is illogical, though, that the Holy Spirit will be taken out of the way and removed from the world to allow the Antichrist to be revealed, because it is the Holy Spirit who brings people to faith in Jesus in John 16:8 and 13 and 1 Corinthians 2:4. If the Holy Spirit is removed, no one can become a Christian, and we know that people do become Christians during the Great Tribulation in Revelation 24. Otherwise, there would be no point in sending the 2 witnesses in Revelation 11, 3-12, if no one was going to convert. No point in sending the 144,000 to minister to the converted during Revelation 7, 3-8, and 14, 1-5, and no point in angels proclaiming the gospel and warning people not to take the mark in Revelation 14, 6-7 and 9-11, for example. Given the numerous verses about the rapture of the church as shown in the prologue to this guide, and especially Jesus' promise in Revelation 3:10, it is logical that these phrases of Paul's refer to the true Christian church being taken out of the way. At some point after that, the Antichrist will be revealed. Paul also provides reassurance that the Antichrist is doomed to destruction in 2 Thessalonians 2:3, and that it is the Lord Jesus who will destroy him in 2 Thessalonians 2:8, confirming Revelation 19:20. Daniel 8:25 also correlates with this. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. It is also significant that 2 Thessalonians 2, 9-10 mirrors Revelation 13, 13-14, and the great signs of the false prophet. The coming of the lawless one, the Antichrist, will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. Information about the Antichrist is important for us to know, which is why it is given more than once to different prophets like Daniel, John, and Paul. It is repeated to emphasize it, to draw our attention to it, and to remind us of it. The signs and wonders in 2 Thessalonians 2:9 are explored in the discussion on the false prophet in chapter 1, part 2, and also in chapter 2 of this guide. The phrase, "those who are perishing," is discussed in chapter 4 of this guide. From these passages in the Bible, it is very clear that the Antichrist will be both powerful and power-hungry. He will exude power and demonstrate power over people and other nations as well as his own. He will also want more power, and he will get it. He will have no plans to give up any of this power once he has it, because his hidden agenda is to be the head of a one-world government, the ruler of the world. Once he is crowned by the people of a nation, elected democratically, he will set about creating a new world order and engineering his one-world government into position. Once he has ushered it into position with him as its head, he will rule over the entire world. The timescale of this is not indicated. The timings are only signalled by the 7-year covenant with Israel being signed as it starts the Great Tribulation, and the Antichrist becomes a brutal dictator over the entire world 3.5 years later in Daniel 9:27. What will lie behind his one-world government is a new world order, a change in the balance of power in the world, often involving different nations being allied with one another that have not been allied before. Typically, this happens for trade and military reasons. A world order is a rank order of the nations of the world, focusing on who is the strongest militarily and the richest economically. In the past, a number of nations and empires dominated parts of the world, and they were at the top of the world order of their day. The Roman Empire springs to mind, for example. As nations rise and fall, their place in the world and in that ranking changes, and a new world order takes place. It is a shift in the rankings of the economic and military might of nations. During the 20th century, groups of nations sought to strengthen and secure themselves by forming groups, such as the EU and NATO, to avoid slipping down the ranks and being perceived as weak. There are 3 countries that top the world ranking right now in early 2025: America, Russia, and China. The Antichrist will bring in his new world order during the time he leads one nation, having been chosen to do so by the people. It will be a shift in world power in his favor, which he will orchestrate. He will use it to form his one-world government, which he will rule over. A one-world government is a totalitarian world government, a unified political power that rules over all the peoples and nations of the world. It is a global dictatorship led by a tyrant, and it has never existed before. A government in itself is made up of people who have job titles, attend meetings, make policies and give orders. It is the nuts and bolts of power and policy in a nation, making it work on the ground each day. To make a one-world government manageable, nations will be grouped into regions ruled by a regional leader who will answer to the overall head. When it comes about, it will be the Antichrist who is head of it overall, in Daniel 11:39. Although Paul tells us that the Antichrist will be revealed when the restraining force is removed in 2 Thessalonians 2:7, which is believed to be the rapture of the church, other signs indicating who the Antichrist is will be evident very clearly ahead of that time. The Antichrist will be the leader of a nation. He will have been voted in democratically. He will have the false prophet at his side. He will be narcissistic and boastful. He will be very popular and will appeal to a very wide demographic of people. He will take the credit for any good things that happen. There will be a narrative about him being a Messiah or Saviour. He will talk a great deal about peace. When he speaks, everyone takes notice of what he says. He will dominate other nations economically and militarily. He will be very focused on military power and weaponry. He will shift the world order in his favor. Once he makes a 7-year deal with Israel involving Jordan that allows Israel access to the Temple Mount to restart sacrifice and offering in Daniel 9:27, it will be obvious who he is. Before then, as Jesus says, watch out that no one deceives you in Matthew 24:4. Chapter 1, Part 2, The False Prophet. In Revelation 13, there is a second beast. The same metaphor of a beast is used, as this man has a similar beast-like character and predatory nature to the Antichrist. This is understood to be the false prophet of Revelation 19:20 and 20:10. The word prophet has led many people to believe that he will be the head of a one-world religion, which is called Babylon in the book of Revelation. Babylon, the one-world religion, is the false church. It appears in detail in Revelation 17 and 18, and its fall is announced in Revelation 14:8 and 16:19. It is significant, though, that whenever the false church Babylon is mentioned, there is no mention of the false prophet whatsoever, which disassociates him from it completely. In fact, the false prophet is only ever referred to in conjunction with the Antichrist, never with Babylon. There is a total disconnection between them, and they are never associated with each other, which rules out the false prophet being head of a church or of the one-world religion Babylon. Furthermore, in the information given about the false prophet in Revelation 13, he is not wearing a crown, nor is he called a king, indicating that he is neither a political leader nor the ruler of any nation. Instead, he is conveyed as being the Antichrist's right-hand man who facilitates his global supremacy. He achieves this by being his prophet in Revelation 19:20 and 20:10, by making everyone worship the Antichrist in Revelation 13:12, through great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven, the sky, in Revelation 13:13, through his creation of a speaking image of the Antichrist in Revelation 13:15, by making everyone receive a mark in Revelation 13:16. One of the ways of identifying who the Antichrist is before he is revealed is that he has a false prophet at his side, a powerful, technological man who will use impressive and sophisticated technology to deceive people. And in his role as a prophet, he will use social media to influence and indoctrinate people into worshipping the Antichrist. What we learn about the false prophet in Revelation 13 is, firstly, that he comes out of the earth in Revelation 13:11. This suggests that he is heavily involved in the world of work. In Genesis 3:17, Adam is told, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life." Because of this, the ground, the earth, is associated with toil and hard work. So this man, the false prophet, coming out of the earth, links him with that, with practical work done with the hands. He is not the man of the people in the way the Antichrist is. Because he creates a mark, a speaking image, and causes fire to come down from the sky in Revelation 13:13 to 17, his work will involve computers, AI, space technology, and technological advancements made in his factories, which will have made him very powerful. He has 2 horns like a lamb in Revelation 13:11, and the horns symbolize great power. However, the simile of the horns being from a lamb rather than a huge and strong animal like a buffalo or a bison implies that he does not look huge or strong. His great power will not be at all obvious at first glance. He also speaks like a dragon in Revelation 13:11, a simile linking him to Satan in Revelation 12:9 and 22, suggesting he is not to be trusted, and his words weave a web of lies in John 8:44. He will say things publicly and be convincing, and do exactly the opposite in secret. Also, his words will echo and reinforce the words of the Antichrist, who is powered by the dragon, Satan, in Revelation 13:2, as he is his mouthpiece. The false prophet, as the Antichrist's kingmaker and right-hand man, is likely to be the figurehead of a group of people who follow the Antichrist fanatically, as with a cult, cultivated through social media, as it is an effective and powerful way to connect with and influence people globally. Similarly, followers of the Apple brand have been described in the media as being in the cult of Apple, so the notion isn't too far-fetched. In the Old Testament, the prophet was the mouthpiece for God, and his role was to speak to the people of Israel, telling them what God had to say to them, with the purpose of bringing their hearts and minds back to God to worship him. The false prophet will act in the same way on behalf of the Antichrist, and in his role as a prophet, he will be the Antichrist's mouthpiece, who speaks like a dragon in Revelation 13:11 through social and mass media to a global audience. He will use social media in particular because it is so effective in order to disseminate and promote the words and actions of the Antichrist to people across the world. It is how he will bring the hearts and minds of people to the Antichrist to worship him. He will become the ultimate influencer on social media. As part of this, within the world of today's social media, he will network with other influencers with huge followings to promote the Antichrist, using them to garner support across a very wide demographic to secure the Antichrist's position at grassroots level. He will promote and support the Antichrist relentlessly on social media, extending the Antichrist's reach to all nations and all age groups to establish, secure, and consolidate his power and influence. John the writer is a direct contrast to the false prophet, as John is a true prophet. He is the mouthpiece for Jesus through the book of Revelation, tasked with telling people what he sees and hears, writing letters to churches, and bringing the hearts and minds of people to him. He is the complete opposite to the false prophet, who will lead people to their destruction through the Antichrist. The false prophet, as we have seen, speaks like a dragon in Revelation 13:11, telling lies on behalf of the Antichrist, and he cannot be trusted in John 8:44. In contrast, John tells us, "The angel said to me, these words are trustworthy and true. The Lord, the God who inspires the prophets, sent his angel to show his servants the things that must soon take place," in Revelation 22:6. As he is a true prophet, John has to eat the words of the little scroll, a little book, before prophesying again, in Revelation 10. The metaphor of eating shows John being infilled with information from God before he can tell people what God has said. This is similar to what happens to the prophet Ezekiel in Ezekiel 3:1-4. However, John tells us that the scroll tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach turned sour, in Revelation 10:9-10. The words in the scroll are sweet because they have come from God, but the content of them is sour due to the horror of what is going to occur. The words of Jesus and the visions John is given are also the infilling that he receives, which he then gives to people through the book of Revelation. This accentuates his credibility as a prophet of God and his son Jesus. The false prophet is also given great power by the Antichrist, as Revelation 13:12 makes clear. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf. He is the Antichrist's helper, his right-hand man, and is given great power to act on his behalf from the outset. He is the kingmaker, the agent who secures the Antichrist's global supremacy and makes everyone worship him. He will do this in a number of ways, including his use of social media, through great signs which deceive everyone, including fire from the sky, a speaking image, and a mark with the number 666 in Revelation 13:13-18. Signs and wonders in the Bible mean miracles in Exodus 7:3 and Jeremiah 32:20-21. To anyone living before the 20th or 21st century, the technology of today would seem incredible, as though miracles are being performed. And it is through technology, including the technology of social media, that the false prophet will make people worship the Antichrist. These will be man-made miracles that are used to deceive people across the world in Revelation 13:14. It is also fair to say that the prophecies about the false prophet could not have been understood properly by the generations prior to the very late 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. Technology has been developed during that time that has made the prophecies both understandable and fulfillable. One of the ways the false prophet makes everyone worship the Antichrist is that he has the ability to perform great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven, the sky, to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs he was given power to perform on behalf of the Antichrist, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth in Revelation 13:13-14. These great signs, man-made miracles, will be spectacular events created using artificial intelligence, AI, which is where computers are built with aspects of human intelligence in them. They are machines that can learn, reason, solve problems, perceive, and make decisions. The signs are also highly likely to utilize androids and humanoid robots for added realism to make them more convincing. Androids are robots that have been designed to look like human beings. They're covered in flesh-like material, have facial expressions, and they move like humans. They look like real people. In contrast, humanoid robots are robots that resemble the human body in general shape, but they're still clearly machines. It has been reported that humanoid robots are becoming quicker to develop due to new technology called robotic large language models. Also, the cost of building a basic commercial use model is reportedly becoming cheaper, decreasing by 40% in 2024 from $50,000 to $30,000 due to an increase in the number of suppliers of robot parts. It has been reported that the cost of a humanoid robot for personal and home assistance is between $5,000 and $20,000. There are also reports asserting that the use of humanoid robots in homes will be widespread as early as 2026. The false prophet will be heavily involved in technology of this kind, and he will use it to benefit the Antichrist as part of his miraculous signs in Revelation 13:13-14. In addition, as a technological man with factories, the false prophet will be involved in creating and building spacecraft and satellites, which is how he will be able to cause fire to come down from heaven, the sky, in Revelation 13:13. This ability did not exist before there were developments in air and space travel, which began with the Wright brothers, who invented, built, and flew the first successful aeroplane in 1903. and the launch of the Sputnik, the first satellite in 1957. Prior to this, anything that occurred in the sky was a natural event, such as a comet or an eclipse. They were part of nature and could not be created or manipulated or used to deceive people. What is described in Revelation 13:13, fire coming down from the sky, is man-made, made by the false prophet. He will use his space technology, his spacecraft, his satellites, and his technological factories to create fire to come down from heaven, the sky of Revelation 13:13, for the benefit of the Antichrist, and it will be in full view of the people through social and mass media in Revelation 13:14. How he will use fire in the sky to deceive people is explored in chapter 2 of this guide. Paul also warns about these events of the tribulation in 2 Thessalonians 2, 9-12, saying in verse 9 that signs and wonders will be used by the Antichrist to deceive people. Furthermore, Daniel 8, 9-10 describes how out of one of them came another horn, the Antichrist, which started small but grew in power. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, the stars in the sky, and it threw some of the starry host, the stars, down to the earth and trampled on them. This can be interpreted as being the use of spaceships, space stations and satellites, correlating with Paul's warning in 2 Thessalonians 2 and John's warning in Revelation 13. How these signs and wonders may be used to serve the lie is explored in chapter 2 of this guide. Another way the false prophet makes everyone worship the Antichrist is that he gives orders to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived, in Revelation 13:14. He has the ability to give breath to the image of the Antichrist so that the image could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed, in Revelation 13:15. This is the image that will be put into the restored temple in Jerusalem halfway through the tribulation, in Daniel 9:27 and Matthew 24:15. Images have been able to move since the creation of the cinematograph, the first motion picture camera and projector of moving images, which was invented by the Lumiere brothers in 1895. With it, they filmed the first motion picture the same year, which was black and white and without sound. The first motion picture with sound, a talkie, appeared in 1927, entitled The Jazz Singer. 3D movies were being pioneered in Germany in 1909 and led to the invention of holograms by Dennis Gabor in 1948. Much more recently, it has been reported that Apple made Apple Immersive Video available in 2024. This is 3D media that has been filmed with a panoramic 180-degree view and spatial audio. The speaking image of the Antichrist that the false prophet gives breath to in Revelation 13:15 suggests a kind of hologram, 3D or immersive experience, or artificial intelligence, AI, and clearly it will draw upon the false prophet's technological skills. When the Antichrist is revived miraculously from his fatal wound in Revelation 13:12, due to an assassination attempt when he is wounded by the sword and yet lived in Revelation 13:14, the false prophet will order this image to be set up and he will make people worship it in Revelation 13:12. The speaking image of the Antichrist in the restored temple on the Temple Mount in 2 Thessalonians 2:4 orders all those who refuse to worship the image to be killed in Revelation 13:15, and this is the start of the Great Tribulation, when the Antichrist is allowed to exercise his authority for 42 months, 3.5 years, in Revelation 13:5. This is discussed further in chapter 4 of this guide. A further way that the false prophet secures and enhances the Antichrist's supremacy is that he forces everyone to receive a mark, which is in existence today in prototype form. In fact, all the technology and weaponry described by John the writer in Revelation exist today, except for one thing. The only technological element of the entire book of Revelation that has yet to be invented is the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20. The development of the mark so far has only been made possible since the advent of the Internet, known as the World Wide Web, which was invented by Tim Berners-Lee in 1989. It became available to the public in 1993, becoming an increasingly integral part of almost every aspect of modern life since then. In the world of today's technology, it is obvious that if people will not be able to buy or sell without the mark, it will contain information about a person's identity and their bank details at the very least. The specific information given about the mark appears in Revelation 13. The translation of the Greek word epi has given rise to different interpretations as to what the mark might be. The King James Version translates epi as in, meaning it is in the body, whereas the New International Version and other versions translate it as on, meaning it is on the body. Strong's Concordance says epi means on, to, against, at. Both of these interpretations are worth considering in the light of today's technology. The King James Version says the false prophet forces all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, in Revelation 13:16-17 KJV. This translation tells us that the mark will be wearable in the body. It will be inserted, implanted or injected in their right hand or in their foreheads, in Revelation 13:16 KJV. Implanted technology is something that has been emerging and gaining traction in recent decades. Kevin Warwick, a scientist, took the first radio frequency identification RFID implant in 1998, and with it he could perform a number of tasks, including opening doors and switching on lights. RFID involves a tag, a small microchip, being attached to or implanted in something. It has information in it that is read by radio waves at short range by a reader device. Since then, microchips about the size of a grain of rice inserted via a syringe into the hand have been trialled in Sweden. By putting their microchipped hand near a digital reader, people can access their homes, gyms, and offices in a more convenient way. The microchips also store contact details, social media profiles, and e-tickets for travel and entertainment purposes. It was reported in October 2018 that over 4,000 Swedes had had this microchip implanted into their hands. In April 2022, the BBC reported that a contactless payment implant, a microchip, has been available since 2019. About 500 people in the UK have bought them and had them implanted in their hands so they can make payments for purchases. This implant is also injected under the skin of a person's hand, enabling that person to make purchases by placing their microchipped hand near a digital reader. Some of these contactless payment microchips work because of near-field communication, NFC. NFC is used typically for mobile payments. It is short-range wireless technology that enables communication between devices that are a few centimeters apart. Other implants for contactless payments use radio frequency identification, RFID. The contactless payment implant is a newly emerging technology made by small companies in 2 or 3 nations as of writing in early 2025. It can be seen as a prototype of the mark. The New International Version says that the false prophet forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name, in Revelation 13:16-17 NIV. This translation tells us that the mark is on the body, which suggests that the mark is a tattoo, perhaps a QR code tattoo or a geolocation tattoo. QR codes were invented by Masahiro Hara in 1994 in order to track manufactured car parts. Since then, they have become very widely used as a quick link to a website that is read by a smartphone, which has obvious commercial benefits for advertising and e-ticketing for entertainment, for example. Since 2011, QR codes have been used as methods of payment as they can store bank account or credit card information and work with different payment apps. A number of countries have adopted QR codes in this way, including China, India, the Czech Republic, Singapore, and the EU, for example. The use of QR codes increased greatly during the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and the requirement for contactless interaction. Since 2021, scannable and functional QR code tattoos have become increasingly popular and more mainstream. Connected to this, a geolocation QR code is one that is created with a GPS tracking function. When the geolocation QR code is scanned by a reader, its geographical coordinates and location are revealed and linked to a map. It has also been reported that geolocation tattoos are now available. They use GPS technology to create a tattoo that changes depending on a person's location. The tattoo displays a message or image when a person is within a particular place, for example. Currently, these are emerging technologies, and they too can be viewed as being prototypes of the mark. What will make the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20 distinguishable from the various prototypes of the mark is when it has both a contactless payment function and active tracking capability, and it is put in or on people's foreheads or their right hands. The inclusion of active tracking capability within the mark is evident from Revelation 9:4 during the first woe, which is discussed in chapter 7 of this guide. It means that, with the mark in or on the body, a person can buy and sell, and their active location can be detected and tracked accurately when they're on the move. Currently, this does not exist, and it requires a scientific breakthrough to bring it into existence. It is likely to involve GPS active tracking capability via satellite. The Global Positioning System, GPS, was pioneered by the US Department of Defense in 1973. Currently, it uses 24 satellites that transmit signals continuously about the locations and the current time of receivers, such as those used in cars or smartphones. This information is processed and displayed by software platforms such as apps and websites. Another aspect that will distinguish the mark as being the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20 is that it will be made, owned, and controlled by the Antichrist and the false prophet. As he is a technological man, it may be the false prophet who makes this scientific breakthrough. He may be able to link a contactless payment function with active tracking capability and apply it on or in people's foreheads or their right hands through his technological skills, his satellites, and his space technology. Whoever invents it, the false prophet and the Antichrist, will own it and control it. They will mass produce it and make it widely available, and then it will become compulsory in Revelation 13:16-17. A further aspect that will distinguish the mark as being the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20 is that it is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666 in Revelation 13:17-18. Today there are many theories about the number 666, including the fact that both the Greek and Hebrew alphabets assign a number to the letters of the alphabet, so the number could relate to a name. Greek and Hebrew were the main languages of the first century church when John was writing. Given that the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20 will have a contactless payment function and active tracking capability, the name of it could be that of the Antichrist himself as its owner, or that of the false prophet as its manufacturer. The number could be a serial number or embedded code that includes the 666. However, the time is not right to be making definite pronouncements on it yet. It is still too soon, although forewarned is forearmed. The right time to calculate the number of the beast will become evident, though. It will be when the mark of the beast appears. Until that time, there can only be speculation about the number 666. The mark of the beast will become evident and appear when it has a contactless payment function, it has active tracking capability, it is put in or on people's foreheads or their right hands, it is owned and controlled by the Antichrist and the false prophet, it is mass-produced, it is widely available, it becomes normalized and embedded within society. Clearly, the technologies for the mark of the beast of Revelation 19:20 already exist, but they're fragmented, and the scientific breakthrough linking active tracking capability with a contactless payment function is still yet to be made. It will take a government body to amalgamate these technologies into a cohesive system to allow this scientific breakthrough to be made and then to mass produce it. What will follow will be a regional, national, then international rollout as part of the normalization of it. To make it widely available to everyone, the cost of the mark will plummet to the point that it may even be free. The government body to take this on will be that of the Antichrist and his helper, the false prophet, either when the Antichrist is leader of one nation or as the head of the one world government. The technology of the mark will be abused and misused when it becomes compulsory to take and people cannot buy or sell without it in Revelation 13:16-17. Before then, as part of the rollout, people will be encouraged to see the mark as a good and desirable thing to have, and those against it will be silenced. People who don't have the mark will be vilified on the one hand and excluded from society on the other. The mark will be said to be life-enhancing and convenient, and will be in or on people's foreheads or their right hands in Revelation 13:16. When it is mass-produced, it will be endorsed by politicians, scientists, celebrities and influencers, and normalized across social and mass media. The mark of the beast could become embedded within society like this. When the mark of the beast in Revelation 19:20 appears and is rolled out to the masses by the Antichrist and false prophet, it will be seen as being beneficial and desirable, as making life better and more convenient. It will be promoted as being the ultimate way of increasing personal safety and security, increasing child safety, preventing crime, avoiding identity theft, reducing lawlessness, and ending terrorism. It will be perceived as being essential to national and international security, and as a means of ending war and promoting world peace. The narrative surrounding anyone who refuses the mark will be that they are against these things, and therefore They will be perceived as being subversive, dangerous, and a threat to society. People will be persuaded, brainwashed, and coerced from multiple angles into taking it. It will be advertised on television, all streaming services, gaming sites, and on all social media platforms. It will be discussed positively across all mainstream news media. Politicians, scientists, celebrities, and influencers will endorse it across social and mass media. It will be the latest must-have, and it will go viral. Films and television shows may even be made showing how the mark helped to solve crime, foil terrorists, and even win against an alien invasion. Both the false prophet and the false church Babylon will be highly influential in persuading people to take the mark. The false prophet will present it as being cool across social and mass media, where it will be trending, while the false church Babylon will focus on it as a way of achieving world peace and unity. It will gain traction and become normalized and embedded into society. As time goes on, people will also be funneled into taking it, as life will start to get harder for those who don't have it. Not having it will start to impact on a person's life each day, in a trickle at first and then as a flood. It will replace passports, so travel will be affected. Not having it will affect gameplay, as a person will be excluded from certain levels or from playing at all. Anyone without it will be excluded from streaming services and from purchasing tickets to sport, musical, and cultural events, either live or online, so they will be denied entertainment. Workplaces will require it. Banking services will require it as proof of identity. People will not be able to buy or sell in Revelation 13:17 without it, so all business, retail, and shopping activities will be affected, including food purchases. A person will require the mark just to live their everyday life, and it will be extremely hard, if not almost impossible, to resist. Added to this, any voices of concern that are warning of danger will be ridiculed as conspiracy theorists, trivialized and dismissed. Anyone expressing such views will be marginalized, and they will be perceived as religious lunatics, even as being dangerous and subversive. This will be the narrative right across social and mass media. It is also likely that opposition to the mark, all dissenters, will be criminalized and silenced by a number of laws around the world, such as the UK's Online Safety Act of 2023, for example. It will be achieved by labelling dissent as being a matter of national security. After being promoted to the masses and endorsed as being beneficial and desirable, and with dissenters silenced, it will become compulsory when the Great Tribulation begins, in Revelation 13:16-17. Having been warned about both the Antichrist and false prophet in Revelation 13, we also discover what happens to them in Revelation 19:19-20. Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered together to fight against the one sitting on the horse, Jesus, and his army. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet who had performed the signs on its behalf. With these signs he had deluded those who had received the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The two of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulphur. This is at the Battle of Armageddon, when the Antichrist, the false prophet, the regional leaders, and their armies are defeated by Jesus in Revelation 19:19-21. Revelation 20:10 expands upon the fate of the Antichrist and the false prophet, and also conveys the fate of Satan. Then the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulphur, joining the beast and the false prophet. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Daniel 7:11 confirms that the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. He also tells us that his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever in Daniel 7:26. In addition, Daniel 8:25 explains that the Antichrist will be destroyed, but not by human power. We gain important reassurance ahead of time that Jesus wins the Battle of Armageddon, and that Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet, all of whom deceive so many people and lead them to their destruction, will be completely overcome, defeated, and imprisoned. These verses are ones to hold on to as the book of Revelation unfolds, and remember, they do not win, but Jesus does.